All right, Joe. So welcome to the Ownership Podcast. Thank you so much for making time to be on with us. How you do today?
Thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be your guest today. It's a real honor. Thank you very much. Doing well.
Awesome. Great to hear. So give us a little bit about your background. Okay, let's start there.
Okay. Well, like just about every person in my field will tell you that they didn't think they were going to wind up being an appraiser or a valuation specialist. Mine kind of started the same way. I was in school and needed to make some money during the year, so I ended up getting a job at the assessor's office and started doing that work. And I was like, I kind of got intrigued by it. And one of the older guys in the office then he's like, "Joe, you ought to think about this as a career. You seem to be pretty good at it." And I was like, "Hmm, I hadn't thought about that. Hadn't really thought I was going to do after school." And that's pretty much how I started as an appraiser. And I wound up taking from there, and I became a partner at KPMG. That was where I spent the most time, public accounting, about 20 some years of it. And then right after that, I started working with a former partner of mine at an investment bank, which is a really great place to get some experience after working at an accounting firm because an investment bank is such a whole different environment. So I really enjoyed that. And during COVID, I started my own firm, and that's where we are today.
That's awesome. Yeah, it must have been really cool because you're obviously on the appraisal side. It's kind of one side of the table, and then you get into the investment banking world, and it's
Yep,
completely the other side. So
absolutely.
yeah, it's safe to say you're probably well-rounded from the standpoint of taking down a real estate deal, understand the ins and outs, and definitely the underwriting process.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. I got to learn a lot about it.
That's awesome. And so your own firm is J2C Evaluation or Valuations, correct?
J2C Valuation Services. Yeah, LLC. That's us.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about like what I know that our conversation the other day, you guys handle a very broad range of like actual types of transactions. Can you just break down like what does your
Sure.
typical transaction look like? Who are your clients?
Sure. So, first, we're a full service valuation shop. So we do business valuations, machinery, equipment, real estate. So basically, any valuation need that a client comes to us, we can handle it. And that could be for a variety of purposes, like you said, different transactions. We certainly do quite a bit of financing and transactional work. We just got done with a portfolio of properties that was being monetized by the owners. They wanted to get a little bit more money to go out and buy some more properties, so
Mhm.
we helped them monetize that. That was a really interesting valuation, especially the types of buildings that our client owns. I should say they are private owners that lease to the GSA.
Okay.
And these are a number of, as you know, some of these leases and buildings have come under scrutiny in the administration, but these are mostly many built to suit, and so there was a and for law enforcement, so it winds up being somewhat in the need of the government to actually own these or have these buildings as part of their portfolio. So
Okay.
very interesting transaction in that regard.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys it's like there's no one size fits all, right? So you guys are seeing all kinds of transactions, all types of industries.
Yep.
Would you say was most of your underwriting on buildings and deals where people want to just have a higher valuation from the standpoint of maybe they did a value add renovation and they're looking to pull the equity? Or is it more on the, hey, we're going to sell this business, so we just need the assessed value, like more in like the M&A space? Like what would you say you guys like what's the most common deal that kind of comes across your desk?
Well, lately, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this one when we initially chatted, but I do a lot of work for the attorneys, basically throughout the country that do property tax appeals.
Okay.
So I wind up seeing just my background in the assessor's office kind of gives me that different perspective that how the assessment officials work. So I see a lot of that kind of work. But on the transactional side, we're we're seeing some of the situation that you had mentioned in terms of, hey, look, we're looking to sell right now, and we kind of want to get an idea where we stand. I've done a number of those, and especially in the market that we're in now, that seems to be very much in demand.
Yep. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
we've had situations where buildings have had to be reconfigured, basically repurposed, And so we've done a fair amount of that kind of work as well, where basically we had, what was it, just fairly recently, we had an office building that was converted to a hotel. And so
Mm.
that was an interesting project as well.
Yeah. Talk about, some zoning regulations to overcome.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly right. I'm working on another one right now, very much along the same area, insofar as a whole, basically the whole parcel is going to be repurposed, and it's a really an interesting gig within the context of the zoning requirements for the area.
Yeah. Crazy. It's gotta be so many details.
There are.
So from the standpoint of when you started your company, talk to us. I mean, obviously with that, with your track record, you had a pretty extensive network, right? Probably really awesome, very loyal referral clients and customers, or a referral network, I should say. Do you have any type of advertising? Like, what does your lead flow look like? Kind of talk to us about how you guys are actually finding your deals.
So, interestingly enough, over the last couple of days, that's been a primary focus of mine. Is that we've relied almost strictly on word of mouth since we started the company almost 5 years ago now, and it absolutely has been effective in that respect. We've had a lot of good referrals from our clients. Our clients like our work, so they've passed the word along to some of their friends, and so our network has certainly grown, and our clientele list has certainly grown in that respect. We have not really embarked on any advertising or really heavy marketing. My marketing person has really been really good about doing our LinkedIn. We've had some good stories and some good things that have come out on LinkedIn, and I think that's gotten some attention. We've gotten some good or referrals and leads off of that. So that's been pretty effective in that respect. But now we're looking at being a little bit more effective in that area, maybe a little bit more targeted on the LinkedIn and other areas that we can do. I'm actually, I was just talking earlier today about attending a couple of newer conferences that I have not been to as well, to kind of build up the network that way as well. So yeah, we're always looking for different ways that we can get our name out there in that respect.
That's awesome. So would you guys say right now from like a pipeline and a workflow perspective, are you guys aren't capped out, like you can always do more transactions?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the team is pretty large. We have about 15 people that work with us here at J2C, and just about everybody's busy. In fact, everybody is busy. They'll tell you that they're all very busy right now, and they are. Uh, but but
Yeah,
but I always feel like we have room for maybe another person and more work.
that's awesome. That's good. That's funny. Out of 15, 14 and a half of them are very busy.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
exactly.
Well, listen, tell me, I mean, I would say kind of twofold on the question. So, in your entire career, was there one transaction, one deal that you worked on that just you'll never forget? And if so, what made it so either special or so horrific?
So the actually two stand out. It's been kind of funny is and I'll tell you about them briefly. Is one transaction that we worked on was a very large owner of cannabis facilities,
Okay.
and it was just so interesting because that market at the time we did that transit or that valuation, the market was really in a state of flux.
Mhm.
It was growing. There was some consolidation and things like that. So we employed a different approaches. We started looking at how each of the companies were rated in terms of how does Moody's, Standard and Poor's, how are they looking at these companies in terms of so when we were trying to basically when we were looking at what those tenants would be in a building, is how could we rate them from basically a credit tenant perspective. And so that was very interesting. It was kind of a novel approach that we really hadn't employed before, and it actually became very useful in that regard. And watching the how that change in the industry happened. In fact, that was a fairly not really long, but it was long enough time ago that there were a number of players that were in that space at that time that have either gotten eaten up or three lineage or lines down the lineage factor in that respect. So it's kind of interesting that really stood out in my mind in respect to it was a really interesting industry to be looking at, I should say.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, it's obviously very state by state, and then the federal government, the FBI can come in and it's like, "Hey, yeah, we have the ability and we have approval." Again, California is the perfect example, right?
Yep.
I remember it was that industry was booming, and there were cannabis shops and dispensaries all over the place popping up, and then
Mhm.
but at any given point in time, the FBI could come in and just shut you down because 'cause they're like,
Just
"Hey,
like that.
we're
Yep.
federal, we don't care what your state says."
Mhm.
Um, and I know a lot of it's at least it was, like a few years ago, it was just all like cash transactions. So,
Mhm.
yeah, from an evaluation perspective, that must have been a very you had to take a very different approach, comparatively speaking to like
Oh, yeah.
your standard approach.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at, the risk associated with it, that's definitely embedded in evaluation of that sort, any type of evaluation where you have to assess what the risk is, there's different nuances to that, and then certainly there was in this case as well.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Tell me about the second deal.
The second one was interesting because it was I had uh, basically knowledge and experience in valuing electric utilities. And so I got asked to help out a co-op electric utility in a basically a plains state, and they were having some difficulties with their property tax burden,
Mm,
and so they asked me to look at how the state was valuing them, and so what turned out it was funny was that the state was valuing them exactly the same way they were valuing investor-owned utilities. So they were basically saying that the risk to an investor-owned utility was the exact same in a co-op, and I was like, "No, it ain't right."
yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
I'm like, there's a much higher risk in a co-op situation versus an investor-owned situation, and so that basically coming up with the market data to back that contention up was very interesting, and it was a very interesting at the time having to go to present that to basically the state. They asked me to present that to the state for them.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting uh, uh, um, uh, hearing, if you will.
Can you, just out of curiosity, because I know that like the whole co-op model, right?
Hmm.
From the standpoint of a utility being deregulated, that's really, really big, for example, in Texas.
Yep.
But I've never understood the difference or the reasoning behind having a deregulated co-op structure versus, let's say, publicly traded utilities.
Hmm.
Can you just shed some light on that?
So, I mean, it's all a couple of different things. Is it comes down to how the utilities are treated in any given state. It's part of the rate base in terms of how they actually come up with the basically what they're charging you is through basically basically not a transaction rather, but an exercise called rate base. And what that is that they're allowed to charge their customers for certain expenses. Okay.
Mhm.
That are part of whatever it is that how they're generating the electricity and then ultimately getting it to you. Between then from there to your outlet, there's certain costs that are involved, and they are allowed to charge for a certain number of things, but they have to get them approved at any given state level. And so from that perspective, that regulation, all right, is interesting because now on the co-op side, that they still had that same kind of formula, but now, of course, is that they're owned individually by people as opposed to investors. So that was the interesting difference in that.
So the co-op's owned by people, but when you say people, is it like private equity or is it
They're
locally?
customers. They're basically their
Really? Okay.
customers. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the customers owned a piece of it.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember, being having a solar background and still being very heavily in the solar space. I remember, remotely selling deals in Texas and having to. It was like it seemed like every few miles there was another co-op and another deregulated X, Y, and Z, and it was
Right.
it was very, very broken up,
Yeah.
which helped them tremendously because it kept their costs just. I mean, they use a ton of power, but the cost per kilowatt or per cost per unit was just very, very low.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that structure definitely helps out.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think at the time the difference between cost per megawatt or cost per kilowatt or whatever they were paying back then it was basically the investor owns were charging double
Yep.
what the co-op was charging. So it was kind
Yeah.
of interesting.
Yeah, and it's kinda I mean, talk about electrical pricing and costs, right? It's,
Mm.
like here in California, it's 3 to 4x where it is for most of the other people in the country. So it's pretty wild.
Mhm.
And yeah, we keep having issues, power lines,
Mm.
fires, and so on and so forth. So
Yep.
pretty crazy. Um, what would you say? So those were two deals that stood out. What would you say was your favorite deal that you ever processed transaction and why?
Hmm. That's a good one. That's a good one. I actually, I guess I ended up having to do, well, actually, quite frankly, it was that GSA one. It was very interesting because, I guess maybe deep down, maybe I always wanted to be a cop. And
Yeah,
yeah, I got to go to a lot of law enforcement facilities and see how that whole thing was, how it operated and everything. So it was pretty interesting to see that,
yeah,
especially from, a civilian standpoint. There's a lot of things that go on, and you talk to some of these guys, and I had a chance to ask some questions, and it was fun from that
yeah.
perspective. And when I was making my road visits, I really enjoyed many of the facilities and the people that I met.
That's awesome. So it sounds like your business and just your careers, it's taking you to. You've seen all types of buildings. You've been able to underwrite and really like pull the curtain back on all different types of businesses. Um, it sounds like it'd be a blast.
It was, and the other one actually, I just thought of it while we were talking. Is I had a chance to do a portfolio of amusement parks as well, and that was pretty darn cool.
That's awesome. You never know what the next lead's gonna bring you, right?
It's true. It's absolutely true.
That's awesome.
Mm.
Well, so if somebody wanted to get in contact with you guys, what does that look like? And then what is kind of the initial onboarding process? What is the underwriting process? Just kind of walk us through the sales process, if you will.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, generally speaking, what happens is I'll get a call or an email asking me to give them a call, or hey, we've got the situation. Can you help out? So people get my name off the website. We have a pretty nice website, it's J2C Valuation .com.
I have it up right here. It's actually very nice.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whoever
and
they did a really good job on that.
thank you. And the obviously my email's on there, so I'll get an email, and generally what happens then is I talk to somebody on the phone, put together a proposal, and then if the terms are meet their approval, then we're good to go. We start working immediately.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. So from the standpoint of when you first started your company until now, what does your growth look like? Um, but you don't have to dive into like very specific like dollar figures per se, but I mean, have you guys? I mean, you guys have 15 people on your team. That's a pretty good
yeah.
sized team.
Yeah, we started with 3 and we went to 15 in the 5 years, and our growth has been exponential. We had this year and last year we only grew like 10%, but 10% is still pretty good.
Oh yeah,
I think this year we're going to make some investments and that kind of thing. So we'll see. It may be a little flat this coming year, but on the whole, I think the growth is still in order. It's going to come. We're expanding out to different areas. So we in the past, we talked about the transactional work and certainly the property tax stuff, but I'm starting to do a little bit more trust in the states work and things like that. So we're kind of branching out in areas where we're trying to go out and meet people in different areas. So the trust in the states areas, we get a lot of work from attorneys. So in that perspective, so we think that the growth is going to come from that.
yeah.
But we've been pretty lucky. We've grown fairly quickly, and it seems to be all going pretty well in that respect.
That's awesome. That's great for you guys. Yeah, I was gonna say as you can only double year over year so often, right? I mean, you get to a certain size, and I think you would attest to this. If you can grow at a consistent 10% on average, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah,
So
agreed. Yeah,
yeah, it sounds like you guys are moving in the right direction for sure.
thank you. I appreciate that.
So is there anything about the company, your career, your expertise, like the direction you guys want to take this kind of moving forward that you want our listeners to know that would just help from a
Sure.
visibility and exposure perspective?
Sure. When you and I chatted initially, I mentioned to you that I got involved with Koretsu Forum, which is basically it's a it's worldwide, but the majority of the people are here in the United States. There's about 3,000 investors in the United States, and like I tell everybody, we're like Shark Tank, but a little bit nicer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And
Yeah,
we meet once a month, and we look at somewhere between 5 and 7 new companies that are out looking for money. So they'll come in, they get a 10 minutes pitch, a 10 minutes Q&A, and then we'll if you have an interest in a particular company, you can reach out to them and invest with them individually in that respect. So, but what was nice about that is that I what it gave me is a lot more exposure to doing due diligence on basically M&A, that kind of work that
yeah,
I hadn't had as much of a chance to focus on even at the investment bank. And so what it did was kind of really gave me a whole new area to grow out on as well in terms of. So we've been doing a lot more business valuation work and due diligence type work, and it's been really a nice add on to what we already do. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and that I mean, for me, that would be the most exciting, and I remember you and I were laughing, and I said, "It's not like Shark Tank, so nobody cries, nobody's shamed and, like, globally, worldwide on TV."
yeah, exactly.
And, it's probably pretty constructive, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah, we're not looking for ratings, so it's
Yeah,
a better environment for an investor or for an entrepreneur to come and pitch their new company.
that's awesome. That sounds like yeah, that's a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah,
Well, listen, Joe, thank you so much for being on with us today. Again, can you just to wrap this up, would you please reiterate company name, your guys' website, and then any other contact information
sure.
that where people can find you guys?
So, J2C Valuation Services LLC. My website is J2C Valuation.com. I'm on LinkedIn. That's an easy way to see me. I'm the only Joe Calvanico for now on LinkedIn. When my son gets older and
Is,
has a job, he'll be on there too. But for
is
right
he
now, he's
Joe?
not.
Is he Joe Jr.?
Yeah, he is.
I got keep it in
uh,
the family.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And and
that's
and if, people are looking to get in touch with me, my email is joe@j2cvaluation.com. It's easy. Joe
perfect.
at j2cvaluation.com.
Very cool.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much again. This
Thank
was
you,
really
Ryan.
fun, and I would love to have you guys back on in the future.
I will look forward to that.
Perfect.
Thank you.